Guyana, a country of 215,000 square kilometers, has been a major player in the development of an international REDD+ mechanism. While exploitation of the country's natural resources is pivotal to the growth of its economy, much attention is placed on sustainable development as envisioned in the low-carbon development strategy. With a fast-growing extractive industry, particularly in the area of mining, authorities are examining ways in which even more lands can be made available for mineral production. This week on Dorado Shines, we will take a look at some of the systems in place to monitor the growing activities in the mining sector and how they ultimately serve to ensure that the environment is protected. Playing a major role in this regard are the Guyana Forestry Commission and the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission.
The GFC is one of the key agencies involved in land use and land management in Guyana, specifically with regards to forestry and forest management. In executing this mandate, we work closely under the umbrella of the Ministry of Natural Resources. And in doing so, we have a very close working relationship with other sister agencies, including the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. So in doing so, our role is one that is quite imperative, not only as a collaborator in the process, but with our own specific mandate. We also have a responsibility to ensure that the areas of our work are best executed in a manner that reflects existing demands as well as new and upcoming demands, not only in terms of monitoring, but in terms of being more proactive in informing policy.
The Environmental Division is a unit that has been mandated to look at environmental issues in the mining industry. From the concept of the Mining Act and Regulation 2089 and 205, the regulation that deals with the environmental issues. And we looked at many things like turbidity, the whole aspect of turbidity management, water pollution. We looked at reclamation. We tried to look at also things like, basically in terms of land reclamation, as I mentioned, and the whole aspect of how you use the Act for compliance purposes.
The Guyana Forestry Commission has been designated as the agency responsible for the implementation of key technical aspects of REDD+, including the development of the National Monitoring, Reporting and Verification System.
One of the newer areas of our work, which started about 3 years ago, is in assessing forest cover change and land use as stimulated by land use such as mining, infrastructure, forestry. And we've been able to create a program of work called the Monitoring, Reporting and Verification System that allows for both proactive and reactive type of monitoring of forest cover and activities that impact on forest cover. What we have to date is a program that allows for us to not only know how much forest we have at the beginning of every period. Throughout the year, we would have activities of forestry and mining being executed. And at the end of every year, we would know how much forest we have remaining.
The monitoring, reporting, and verification system plays an integral role in helping the Commission determine the real impact of mining and other activities on the environment.
That is a very powerful tool because it allows for us to know exactly what the impacts are of the activities that are being executed over every annual period. And in doing so, we are able to not only know what is happening and the specific geographic area in which that activity has been causing an impact, but also the extent of that impact. And this allows for us to be able to inform policy and inform strategies that can allow for better monitoring, improved monitoring programs, and a more proactive way in executing the mandate of the natural resources agencies.
But you have to remove trees before you can get them to the subsurface. You have to remove overburden, and before you can actually get the pay dirt or the minerals, you have to use a lot of water to get those things into a slurry form before you can get it through your sluice box. In all of those endeavors, you will find that there is some levels of pollution. So if they're not properly controlled, for example, in terms of the mining itself, for getting it into the slurry form to pass through the sluice box and then to discharge, and it goes directly into the waterway, then it's a problem. The first thing you will see when you flew over in the hinterland, look down, you find a discoloration of water. You don't want that. So terrain management is an integral part for all operations that is involved in mining.
Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment. This comprehensive monitoring system being used by the GFC is fully capable of capturing all types of extractive activities being carried out in the country's forest.
For any kind of program that is being executed, whether it is issuing new areas for utilization or expanding utilization in existing areas, contracting use in some areas, maybe shifting to new areas, whatever the kind of land use or land management activity that is being executed, our program of work under the MRV covers that in full. One of the greatest advantages of this program is that it allows for us to monitor the entire Guyana. So it is not selective for only existing areas which are issued for mining or for forestry activities, but for the entire Guyana. So when there are issuance of new areas or expanding of existing areas, all of this is covered within the MRV.
By using such an effective platform, development of the country's natural resources is expected to continue and even increase, with authorities being confident that such operations will have minimal impact on the environment.
If there are new programs, as we know, there may be new programs upcoming that would involve areas of work not only in monitoring but in extraction itself. We're able to cover all of this under the MRV. So we say this in a way that we hope gives some assurance that the platform has been built, a solid platform has been built for us to make informed decisions about where would the greatest impact be if we were to locate activities, for example, mining and forestry activities. Because we know, for example, to date, where are those contiguous tracts of intact forest. And this kind of information allows for us to make decisions as to where best can we allocate concessions, if there are need for expansion of concessions or opening up new areas for concessions. We now have information that allows for us to make more informed decisions. And we see more and more, not only at the level of the GFC, but at the level of the ministry and through the newly created unit called the Geographic Information Management Unit under the ministry, that we're able to put this information to use in informing these decisions.
The state-of-the-art monitoring system in place makes it possible for the Commission to closely examine the forest cover through satellite imagery and mapping.
Our monitoring occurs in two aspects. There is a monitoring that looks back at the period just past. So the core of the MRV, one of the core parts of the MRV looks for the previous year. So this looks at national figures that estimate the total amount of forest that has been impacted by mining, by forestry for a 12-month period. So for example, in this year 2014, we're looking at the assessment for forest change over the year 2013. And that is important to allow for more macro kind of results to inform larger scale national policies. But then there's a second part of the program that really is as a result of an increasing demand to inform monitoring programs in a more real-time manner that allows for us to, if there is something that happens in the course of the year that we are in, not just in the previous year, that we are able to take action and be able to inform our program of work in the fields.
Additionally, work is being undertaken to closely monitor those areas where mining, logging and other economic activity are at its highest.
An important aspect that we've been working on is in this very area. We have been looking to see what are the options that are available, and actually we've started some important work on aerial surveys and in using local resources through our contacts within the airline industry in Guyana to conduct routine aerial surveys of some of the hotspots, as we call them, for mining and for forestry activities. What we've been trying to look at in a very detailed way, and we're aware that as areas become open up through roads and other kinds of infrastructure, increasingly those areas have a greater propensity to be subject to forest cover change. And that is one of the main determinants of where we monitor in the real-time manner. Currently, we have an overflight operation currently being executed over the hotspot areas for both mining and forestry to not only build on our data set for validating our 2013 results, but also informing monitoring programs for this year, 2014.
These activities are already providing the Commission with valuable information and guidance on which locations require closer scrutiny.
We've already seen for 2014, in using the previous data sets we would have collected through aerial surveys, the targeting of activities of monitoring in the field, certainly at the level of GFC, we've been able to inform in a more targeted way where we're to concentrate our monitoring efforts. And through the sharing of information with the Geology and Mines Commission and the umbrella unit called the Geographic Information Management Unit, we see more and more as well that we're looking deeper into the area of where is the greatest amount of forest cover change in the mining activities, not only in the reconnaissance areas, but also the small, medium, and large scale operations.
To date, Guyana has earned 3 consecutive payments from Norway totaling $115 million within the framework of our low-carbon development strategy. In the last quarter of 2013, the annual third-party audit of Guyana's performance under this partnership was completed, clearing the way for a 4th payment. The extensive information being gathered by the monitoring, reporting and verification system also makes it easier to detect illegal operations.
Because we now see things from a holistic standpoint, and we now have not just a one-off data set, but we have a regularly updated data set of where forest change is happening. This, coupled with the data set that we have, which gives information on where we've approved for forestry activities to take place, we're now able to match that with each other. So the information on where forest loss is taking place, along with the information on where we've approved for forestry activity to take place, now presents a very, very useful data set that allows for us to know if forest loss is taking place in an area where we do not have currently approved forestry activities. But I think one of the complexities we face in the forest sector, and it's one of the points we continue to sensitize our stakeholders about, certainly our international stakeholders also need to be aware of this, that forestry activities by their very nature do not lead to deforestation. Because the rate of harvest is so low, the impacts would more be felt in the area of forest degradation, which would mean that tracts of forest do not get cleared as a whole block, as we would see in other extractive activities. So this calls for not just aerial surveys and not just MRV type of satellite imagery analysis, but on-the-ground kind of efforts to really go within forest areas and where we suspect that there might be activities occurring where we may not have approved, to go and get that pinpointed and for action to be taken.
Effectively monitoring and protecting the country's forest resources do not come without its challenges, particularly in an environment where several different economic and other activities are being undertaken, often simultaneously.
One of the main challenges we face is that we are not the only agency operating within forest areas. I mean, there are many other stakeholders also at play. And we have indigenous communities that are utilizing some of the areas. We have mining operators using some of the areas. We've also seen, for some of the areas subject to developmental works, like the Amalda Falls project and other infrastructure works, that there are many stakeholders involved in working in any part of the forest. And this kind of multi-stakeholder approach is essential for us to be able to have any kind of effective program. So whilst it might be a simpler undertaking if we were the only stakeholder involved, so we know it's just the forest concession holder that can possibly be making an impact on the forest areas we have granted, That is not quite the case because there are many stakeholders who can be using a similar area. Guyana has multiple use of forests, so it is not just one stakeholder. And that can lead to challenges in some cases whereby instead of just going to speak to one stakeholder group, you now have to go to speak to many stakeholder groups.
Such challenges have seen renewed efforts being made to further strengthen relations with other agencies to improve collaboration. The establishment of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment has made this effort much more effective.
If we look back over 3 years ago when we did not have the umbrella organization of the Ministry of Natural Resources, it really was GFC working under a separate ministry, the GGMC under a separate ministry, and the EPA working under the Office of the President. And in our collaboration, whilst we would communicate, it certainly was not as smooth as it is now. So I would say one of the main advantages of having the ministry, having these agencies under its umbrella, is allowing for a smooth flow of communication. Because even if we cannot get to the agencies directly, we go through the ministry and we're able to get effective action and perhaps in some way a higher emphasis and a higher prioritization of the essential programs of work that we have in place to address the maintenance of forest cover and ensuring there is strong forest legality in the areas which have been underutilization.
Monitoring efforts are also becoming more effective as coordination among the agencies continue to improve.
What we've been discussing, I think we'll be seeing more on this in the upcoming period, is the coordination of monitoring efforts, so that when we go into some areas, it is not the GFC going in and then the GGMC follows and then the EPA would go to look at the areas they want to look at. But it is one of our ambitions to have coordination in the monitoring activities as well. For several reasons, because it saves on cost, it saves on time, and it allows for the sharing of specialities and skill sets across the agencies in executing of monitoring activities. And hopefully that ambition can be more realized as we undertake our program of work in 2014 and beyond.
Guyana is pushing for human resources development in the extractive sector so that miners can be better equipped with the knowledge of effective mining practices on a world-class level. More efforts are also being made to meet with communities and speak directly with stakeholders to not only impart knowledge and information, but to learn directly from residents valuable information that would serve to even better manage forest resources.
Forestry activities more and more are taking place not only with private operators, large companies, foreign companies, but more and more so with community forestry groups. Within the structure of GFC, we call them community forestry organizations, and these are formal organizations that are registered under the Friendly Societies Act. Currently, we have close to 320,000 hectares issued in terms of forest land to community forestry organizations. Over 70 community forestry organizations, and these are spread across the regions of Guyana, including regions 10, regions 9, regions 1 and 2 as well. So working with community forestry organizations has become a necessity now because they're a major stakeholder within the forest harvest arena. So when we go into areas, like say we are to execute a monitoring activity in Barama, or we're willing to work with Barama Company Limited for a program of work that we may have, for example, independent forest monitoring or forest law enforcement, governance and trade, working with communities becomes essential because they're right nearby and they're conducting harvesting activities.
Recently, we have had a Pick It Up, Pack It Up campaign in Peroni. Presently we're in Madian, and we hope to have 2 more before the month is finished in Tamaki and Kurapong. It is amazing how if you can see the kind of turnout and the kind of community togetherness that has shown in the Pick It Up Packet campaign in Peroni. And one of our mandates also with respect to our visit in the fields, where we can have a community where there is a group of people we can sit as throat of the commission to talk with them, to tell them about mining. Something we have a awareness session.
There's a number of outreach to different locations in Guyana where the different agencies are all invited and be a part of this team. And of course, one of the main objectives during these outreach meetings is to ensure that we can address issues from the different perspective, from the different agencies.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is creating conditions for the responsible and sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resources. Operators are encouraged to mine with the environment in mind. Training and strengthening the capacity of stakeholders have also been seen as key roles in effective forest resources management.
In many cases, we find that the best way to ensure that our standards get implemented effectively is by building the capacity of stakeholders to do so. And one of our main programs over 2014 is ongoing capacity building, especially with small forestry associations which are now being established to allow for us to see more positive impact in the level of compliance.
More specifically, we have a number of interagency committees which is established of recent and over the past 2 years or so. We have the one we call the Hinterland Intelligence Committee. The Hinterland Intelligence Committee is basically chaired by the police force, where the Commissioner of Police chaired that meeting, and of course looking at all security issues within the hinterland area. Here again, give the agency an opportunity to interact at a level where we can advise each other as it relates to risks, and also for agencies to also comment on security action plan within different specific location. We also have another committee which is very important, and it relates to activities within the forest, called the Hinterland Infrastructure Committee, which is chaired by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. At this committee, we have representatives from different agencies. Again, this is important to note here because as you talk about hinterland development, of course, agencies are being more equipped now with information in a more proactive way as it relates to new establishment. Let's say, for example, infrastructure. Let's say there's a new road going to any specific area. Coming with access will come activities. So right there and then, it started to prepare the agency to take into consideration these new coming activities in that particular location.
These communities have been working with some degree of success to address pressing issues in mining and forestry.
As it relates to feedback coming back from our stakeholders, especially the loggers in the fields, there's been a lot of improvement as it relates to security within the hinterland area. Of course, security is something that we can't address as a one-off, and one to take note is that by the regular meeting of this committee, there is an opportunity to voice any concerns and for quick action, and for an action plan to put in place in collaboration with the different agencies. As it relates to infrastructure, we know, especially in this time of the year, with all this rain, the weather pattern, we know there is a lot of concern as it relates to infrastructure, the quality of roads. Of course, agencies, again, are given the opportunity to work together to find possible way to address some of the challenges faced by the stakeholders. All in all, together to work in partnership to make the sector a better one, and not only for the forestry sector, but also in general for all road users and for the hinterland stakeholders.
The response from hinterland communities has been favorable, and it is hoped that such partnerships would not only continue, but grow and further develop.
We recognize from the GFC perspective as it relates to monitoring and enforcement, we can't do it by ourselves. We depend to work in collaboration with the hinterland communities and the hinterland stakeholders. These are the people who are living out there and who have real-time information on activities. So partnership and working together with the hinterland communities is one which is very important. And as much as possible, these communities are involved through the different agencies. Maybe if it's a logging community, through the Guyana Forestry Commission, if it's a mining community, through the GGMC. But again, they may not be involved directly or attending these meetings, but through the different agency representations are being made.
We also have a very active, vibrant hydroponics program project that we have done in Madhya, where we now moving to help miners have to be more self-sufficient. Mining, as the land opened up, as you rightly said, people tend to go deeper and deeper into the land. One of the good things about any camp is people want to have fresh greens, and that is something that has always been a problem in the past because greens last for a couple of days and then it's go. So if we can promote also the whole aspect of hydroponics in the interior, you find that as you get deeper, it's no problem because the whole aspect of hydroponics is that you don't need this every soil. You don't have to depend on the soil. Hydro is water.
To learn more about the new litter prevention regulations, visit the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment's website at www.nre.gov.gy and click on the link Pick It Up Guyana. Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Dorado Shines and start watching, or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates. You've been watching Dorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember that we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.